All right, pretty interesting episode today. We've been thinking about this one for a while, a few weeks. Totally off the cuff, came up with the topic this morning.
Yeah.
Seemed kind of interesting. And the topic of the podcast today was, when are the thoughts of wanting to use going to go away in early recovery as you start your journey into getting sober?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And this is actually like, though we did just come up with this is a pretty common question that I hear on the therapy side, that it can be almost like an incessant, like just gnat or mosquito, just like, when is this going to go away? So I do think it's a pretty relevant topic for a lot of people. And it could also be really helpful to understand, if you're not an alcoholic or addict, what's it like for people. So
Yeah.
would you guys all say that's a pretty normal thing to experience? Like this urge of like, is it going to go away, or it feels like this is constant nagging? How would y'all describe it?
In the beginning, yeah, it felt like a gnat in your face that would not leave. And I don't know for me if it were much as like thoughts of wanting to use in the very beginning as it was thoughts of just wanting to quit. My thoughts, I don't know if I could, maybe I was lying to myself, but the thought wasn't, I want to go get high right now. It was like, I didn't go that far in the thought process. It was just like, recovery is hard and I don't like it and I want to quit. I want out of this treatment center. That was my thought. It wasn't. Now, was I going to go get high if I got out of that treatment center? Absolutely. But it kind of stopped at, this is really hard and uncomfortable, and I want things to be comfortable again.
Yeah, I feel like it's a like if you're trying to, I'm thinking about it from like a sports standpoint, like when you're a little kid, like trying to learn how to shoot a basketball or like swing a baseball bat, and your coach is like, you're used to just swinging, and your coach is like, hey, no, you got to like do it this way, or you got to keep your elbow in, and it feels like this foreign thing that you're doing. It's like being in another country, like trying to speak the language. It's like, this is so uncomfortable. Like I'm having to use all the parts of my brain at all times. And also I kind of suck at this. Like I'm not very good at this. I just want to go back to like what I'm good at. So it's a very vulnerable thing from what I understand.
Yeah. Lucas, any thoughts? Lucas is with us today.
Yeah, I think that it's something that I hear a lot for myself. I don't think that I ever wanted to stop using, like, until I did. And by the time that I did, I can't remember the thoughts coming up that much. Because I was just like fighting treatment and sober living so hard. So it wasn't like, oh, I want to stay sober, but I keep having these thoughts, like that's what I would say to somebody to justify a relapse afterwards, if like, oh, I just couldn't stop the thoughts. But like, I never stopped having the thoughts. I didn't want to stop having the thoughts. I just wanted to keep using and drinking. And then luckily, because I went to long-term programming, by the time that I was out on my own, I wanted to be sober. And then I don't think there was as much of the thoughts. But when are these thoughts to use going to go away? I don't think ever for me. Like I'll still have them occasionally today, years and years later. But not for as long, easier to deal with, way less frequent, like talking maybe once or twice a year or something. And it's normally from seeing something, like it's like in my face, like it's not like I'm just having a hard time and I'm like, oh, I'm like start thinking about alcohol in my head. It's like I'm at the grocery store, pass by the beer aisle, and have that crazy thought of like, what if I just bought beer right now? But then immediately I'm like, that's insane. I'm not doing that. So that's kind of my experience with it.
Would you say, well, I got a question on that. Would you say it's like a scale on some level? It's like when you first came into sobriety, like the scale was still way more tipped into favor of like, I'm going to use again. I should use again. But then like, as like time went on and you finally were like, hey, I'm actually getting something out of this. I'll give this a shot, which if I remember right for you was somewhere around 6 months. I'll give this a shot. then like the scale started to tip. You're like, okay, I feel like I'm like sleeping better, or my relationships are better, or I have more money or whatever. And the scale is just like slowly tipping. And now here you are, you know, like a decade in plus, like the scales have tipped so far of like, it makes so much more sense to not use than to use. Like I have all these other things in my life. Do you see it kind of like that in your mind? Is that a fair way to describe it?
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's also like the time spent sober versus the time spent using. And when I'm 30 days in, I have 30 days experience being sober in wilderness treatment that like sucks while detoxing. And then I have 10 years of experience of using and drinking that I can selectively pick out only like the best times when everything lined up and no consequences and whatever. So I feel like the more time that I have sober, the more experience and like the bigger sample size I have to pull from to be like, oh, not every day sober sucks. And I got through treatment, through sober living, to my own living situation, got a job, lost a job, got another job. You know, like there's so many things that came up that I gave it like a fair shot. Like I just now, last year am now equal. I'm only equal
Yeah.
in the time that like I spent 10 years using and I now have 10 years sober. It took me that long just to have it be equal. But I would say the scales feel they way more quickly feel equal, if not leaning towards the sobriety, maybe only like 3 months in, 6 months in, 9 months in, definitely a year in feels like, all right, I've got enough experience here that this is way better than using drinking, at least as far as like the quality of my life. Like I would always be like, oh, it'd be way cooler to be able to do drugs, you know, like that part I think would always stick in there. But if I could zoom out, play the tape forward, the consequences is what I really didn't want anymore.
You had a hidden weight on your scale, which is like your values and character and conscience, you know, where it's like once you started putting some stuff on there, like 6 months sober, like, you know, relationships getting better. What you're saying is like it didn't take 10 years of being sober to finally like equal the weight of 10 years of using. It like pretty quickly like started to like, you know, balance out and shift more into favor of staying sober, which is really interesting.
Yeah.
And probably because I had 15 years being sober before I started using, and I just had to like reconnect with that to realize that I actually have like 25 years of sobriety and like trying to live a decent life and having great support and all that. Cause I had that from, you know, being born to 15. I just totally lost touch with it in those 10 years. So I think the longer you stay sober, the more you reconnect again to those, like you said, those morals, those values, relationship support, to where then that kind of aids you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And having little kids, I can imagine, you know, you see like, even though you may not be able to remember much about what happened in the first 15 years of your life, or, you know, like the memories are kind of like sporadic, that stuff really happens. You know, I mean, with your kids being as young as they are, they're not going to remember a lot of this stuff, but these things really are happening to them. They're having an effect on like their hearts and their brains and who they are as little people. So that counts, you know, that really does, even though you may not as a person be able to recall it.
Yeah,
know?
for sure.
It's cool.
Yeah, one thing I wanted to touch on there is when Lucas said, you know, today maybe I only have 1 or 2 a year, like thoughts of wanting to go back or relapse thoughts. And I would say the worst, at least for me, I'll speak for myself, are dreams. Like if I have a dream, I'll have these crazy dreams sometimes where I like used in my dream and I'll wake up thinking like, oh shit, did that really happen? Like, did I smoke weed last night? Like what just happened? Those are the scariest. And then like, I'll notice that next day, I'll kind of obsess on that dream of like, God, what would it look like if I did smoke? You know, I'm just questioning things more. But I'm in the same boat. It's like once or twice a year, maybe I'll have a thought, but that scale way tipped in the other direction. And I do think it's twofold. I want to say one thing about the scale. I think it is time removed from the substances, the drugs, alcohol, but something I tell every family that I talk to is that it's also experiencing wins in recovery. So, and y'all have heard me say it a million times, like filling up your pride tank, which I stole that from Campbell. But it's like being able to accomplish things and feeling good about those positive things in recovery speeds that process up and makes that scale tip a lot faster. And that's going to be different for every person. Like it depends on like, do you want to wallow in the crap that you just came from and say like, I don't want to get a job and I don't want to pay bills. And it's like, those are the very things that are going to give you a sense of self-worth and pride, is when you feel accomplishments.
I agree. I have a pretty crazy dream story that happened when I was maybe like 2.5 years sober. We had just started Greenville Transitions. No, maybe I was like 3 years sober. Whatever it was, I had a chip and I kept it on me at that time. But so I'm like 3 years sober. I think I'm still like filling in like coaching at the sober living house. And so I go to bed, and then in my dream, I wake up from the coach's bed and leave and go get in the GT van. And I go down the street to CVS and I buy a bunch of wine coolers and I drink them in the parking lot. And this is like 2, 3 a.m. in the dream. CVS wouldn't be open, but this is a dream. And I get like hammered drunk, and then I go to leave and I get my car stuck in a ditch in front of the CVS because I'm drunk. And then a cop comes and he's like, what's going on? He's like pretty suspicious. And then the grossest thing ever happens. I grab that chip and I'm like, I'm not messed up. This is my 3-year sobriety chip. And he's like, whoa, I can't, like, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Obviously you're sober. Like, let me just get you out of this ditch and get you back home. And so I like get out of the trouble lying about my sobriety, and oh, it made me feel so bad. Anyway, so then I drive, and by this time I'm getting, once I finish up with the cop, I have like text messages from David that are like, where are you at? You missed morning meditation. The guys are like calling me, and like all these texts and calls from the guys that were like, where are you? We need our meds. Like, just feel so guilty and so bad. Then I drive back to the sober living house, and then I wake up from the dream in that sober living bed. And so like, I have never been so tripped out by a dream of like it feeling real as that in my life, because I woke up from that bed in my dream and I went back to sleep in that bed in my dream, and then woke back up in that bed. So it was like all one continuous thing, but that was an awful dream.
Hey, and CVS might have been open. That was pre-COVID, before things started shutting down at 11.
Yeah, it's true. Might have been. Yeah, it may have been a 24/7 deal. The what did you do with that? Did you tell somebody about it?
Yeah, for sure. I didn't feel like using it. Just felt like David's point of like, did that really happen? Like for probably like months, I would think like, is this like a repressed memory? And I've like pushed this down, and that did happen, and like, just nobody talks about it. And then to your point, David, I'd be like, probably not as much today, but I think in the first maybe like 2 to 5 years, I would just like out of nowhere just be like, do I really have 5 years? Like, I know I must have messed up somewhere along the way. Like sober living's kind of hazy. I probably did something there. Like my brain's like telling me like you don't have that the time sober you think you do. Like kind of this imposter syndrome may be kind of like fraud check thing, but the brain is an insane thing.
Yeah. It also, it's very similar to what I've had clients tell me over years of what it's like having OCD, where particularly if it's like fear-based OCD and it's like more like ruminations, you will worry about this thing you maybe did, and did this happen? Did I get away with it? Like, or am I sick and I just don't know it? And it can really spin up. So it makes sense on some level, like why somebody early in recovery or just in recovery in general would be prone to that, because very often there's anxiety, which is like a precursor to using, and like obsessions and OCD. It's just like a function of anxiety. It's just way it's manifesting. I will say to the therapist though, like, and this is just because I'm not skilled in it at all, and I don't even know if I have dreams anymore. When a client comes in and sits on my couch and like, so I had this dream last night, I'm just like, oh God, I got to do like dream interpretations here. Like, I don't know what I'm doing at all. So there are some therapists that are really good at like interpreting that. I have a funny dream story too. In grad school, you have to quit, in your addiction counseling class, you have to quit something for 30 days as a way to like develop like empathy for your clients that you're going to be working with. So I don't identify as an alcoholic or addict. So it wasn't like I was picking like anything like that. But at that time in my life, I absolutely loved chocolate milk. And I probably had a glass of chocolate milk at least every day for going on like since I was a little kid. And I was like, all right, I'm gonna stop drinking chocolate milk. So I had the craziest dream like a week or so into it, in which I am in this like giant glass of chocolate milk that like I'm like a tiny little person in this ocean of chocolate milk, and then the getting stirred, like somebody is stirring up the chocolate milk, and it's like a whirlpool. And I remember just being like screaming, like going down the whirlpool of chocolate milk. And I woke up and was just like, what the hell was that? Like, what, why, you know? Um, and the answer is, I don't know why, but I did think that was very interesting. Like even chocolate milk, not even like not even like a serious substance, had like a weird dream like that when I had to like quit chocolate milk for a little bit.
I think it's the brain's way of saying, hey, dude, come back. Come back to your dopamine fix, your sugar rush.
Yeah.
The
Very,
same way it is for me and Lucas around drugs and alcohol dreams.
yeah.
To me,
Yeah.
it always feels like similar to like what they call, what is it? The call of the void or the call to the void, like on a tall building, and your brain has that thought of like, what if I just jumped?
Yeah.
It kind of feels like that. Like it's my brain kind of like playing it out to like, oh, what if I just jumped? So then I think about what would happen if I jump, kind of playing the tape forward so that I don't jump, like
Yep.
now or in the future, to kind of sear that in. And my
Mhm.
brain is like playing those things out. And sometimes the dream kind of feels like that it's like they're like never good. In my experience, maybe some people have some good drug dreams, but mine are always filled with like shame and lying and like still getting caught. And I rarely ever even get to use the substance. It's like almost every bad consequence of drug and alcohol abuse without like the good part. And so it kind of feels like my brain reminding me like this isn't a good thing, and like we just played it out in this dream. Like we ran a scenario. This is what it looked like. Like in my case, like that was awful. Who would be like, oh, yes, now I just want to go get some alcohol and play out what just happened in my dream? Like, very, very few people. So
Yeah. Well, I think that's the way of taking it, like having some gratitude around it. Like it's reminding me of like what it could be like without actually having to experience that. And that's yet another like little weight on the scale of like staying sober. Like I don't want this to happen. And so though it is distressing, or create stress, like it maybe isn't negative stress. Maybe it's like a positive type of stress, almost like building a muscle and like putting it under strain of like, hey, this is more reassurance of why I need to stay sober. So I don't have to experience this.
yeah,
That's good. Go ahead.
I was gonna kind of pivot or like go back, but I was also thinking about, I feel like almost everything that we talk about with our guys that we work with or anyone that comes through our program, but especially our guys, because we work with their families as well, is like the parallel between the two of like the kind of parent, like codependency / like enabling, and then the guy we're working with like use and drinking. And I was thinking about that same thought of like, when are these thoughts to enable or be codependent going to go away? Where like that's not my first instinct. It's like, oh, my son just called me, he's got this problem. My first thing is like, let me just fix it. Let me call David, let me call Lucas, I'll do this, I'll do that. And like I've seen parents where over time slowly they get better, they like hold themselves back. They're like, nope, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to practice, doing it this way. But I'm sure that thought still comes up even like 3 years later, 5 years later, into their child sobriety of, oh, I'll just go fix it, and then still have to hold themselves back from it. So I feel like that parallel is always really interesting to me because it seems to always fit almost perfectly, being the same thing for both parties.
Mm-hmm. Is that something that y'all have seen with like your parents, like your moms, of like they still, years into your sobriety worry like if you're okay, or have they ever said anything like that y'all have heard?
Not not that I've heard. Um, I know my mom can still like not like to see any of her kids or grandkids struggle. um, but no, I don't think she's been worried about me to a sense of like, I don't like, are you okay in a terms of like, are you going to go use again type thing? Which my mom got, I mean, I was in a pretty dark place before I got sober, like suicidal, really dark. And I think she got drugged down into a pretty dark place too, to where I know like I've had several conversations with my mom today, and she's like, my prayer became for God to either save you or take you. But I can't do this in between anymore of like the in and out and watching you struggle and ruin relationships in your life and burn jobs to the ground. And like, if that's what's going to continue, I'd rather God just take you. So like, that is my prayer, is like, God, take him from this earth if this is the struggle, the battle that he's going to have to fight, or show him the light, like let him be saved. And I would venture that she still has that attitude today, that if like I went back to that dark of a place, that she would just, I think she knows now that, hey, this is out of my hands, it's out of my control. I think she did a good job of realizing that.
Yeah,
It's super heavy.
yeah, it makes sense. What are you gonna say, Lucas?
I was gonna say I don't notice it much with probably ever with my dad, but with my mom, it actually just happened recently. And it was because I think it's like, something needs to come up in the environment. And so I can't think of any time where it seemed like they thought that I was like using or drinking again, or were like kind of looking at my eyes or anything like that. But I remember I was actually down here, we were shooting this podcast, and a family, like past neighborhood friends of ours, their son had passed away at like 15, and it was like a real tragedy. And I think my mom was like feeling for her friend, this young man's mom, and her first thought was like, where's my son? And so she like came home and she kept like calling for me, and I was in here and I was like trying to be quiet, and I kept hearing, and she's like knocking on the door, and I'm not answering because it's like people know that if I'm in here, I'm in here and I'm doing something. But afterwards, I saw kind of like the fear in her eyes, and she like hugged me and was like, I just wanted to know that you were all right. And so maybe something like that happened, and that kind of like triggers that old fear of like, well, where's my son and what's he doing? Is he okay?
Yeah, it's very similar to the dreams, I think, for parents, because it's just preparing you for situations. Like, let me run this scenario in my mind so I'll be able to handle it okay. Then maybe I won't feel as much pain. Maybe I'll know what to do. And I think our brains are just wired to constantly like anticipate, worst case scenarios. So when those scenarios happen, we're able to like actually get through it. The reality is a majority of worst case scenarios probably don't happen. You know what I mean? Like the what did you call it earlier? Like jumping into the void, or what's that called, Lucas?
The call of the void, or the
Call the void, right? Like most people are not going to jump off the bridge, but what if I did? Let me just run this scenario, But when you're talking about addiction and especially early recovery, there's a really high chance that there is going to be a relapse, like, so let me prepare myself, either like willingly or not. Let me prepare myself for that heartbreak and worry and anxiety that may happen. So it makes a lot of sense, like both on a logical level, but and also even just like a survival mechanism of why people do that. And it does take, it's kind of like that scale. It takes time, time for it to start to shift a little bit, and you can have more confidence that like my son is okay, my daughter is okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Going back, I want to go all the way back to you talking about your school and giving up chocolate milk, or having to give anything up that you liked on a daily basis. What was it? You explain this. I'm fumbling over my words.
It was an assignment in our addiction counseling class that we had to give up a behavior or just something that we enjoyed. We had to give it up for 30 days, and we had to do that project twice. But one of the ones that I gave up was chocolate milk. And then I had a crazy ass dream in which I was in a whirlpool of chocolate milk.
Yeah. So I would challenge any parent that watches this to try that, to do that exercise. Like if they're wondering how much is my son or daughter struggling, or how often are they having these thoughts of wanting to go back to that drug or alcohol, like do it with your cell phone. Put your cell phone away for a week and see how many thoughts you have of wanting to go back to it, or put your whatever. If you like to have a sweet treat at the end of every day, like your chocolate milk, put that and see how many thoughts you have of wanting to go back to it, and then amplify that. Like now let's ramp it up to just imagine like what your son or daughter is feeling if they truly were relying on drugs or alcohol that were rewiring their brain chemistry.
Yeah. Yeah. The other thing I gave up was hitting the snooze button. And I do think this exercise and this challenge to people is really important because you learn something about yourself in doing this. Not only do you have like more empathy for other people who are trying to quit, but you learn something about your character and maybe some of your own like defects, if you will. But I, by nature, am like a very stubborn person, and on the surface, really like agreeable, pretty pleasant guy. But if you get me like locked down on something, I can be really stubborn. And the other thing I gave up was the snooze button, and I was not going to hit the snooze button for 30 days. And so I came up with some strategies for this. I wasn't super excited about this project. And I would put my phone on the like other side of the room, and I would just get up with my alarm and off, turn it off and just keep moving to the bathroom and just going about my day. Well, I did this for 29 days in a row. And then it got to day 30. And this is like where that like very sneaky stubbornness that Cole has, to something he has to be aware of. Like I got up, looked at my phone, and I said, F that. And I hit snooze or turned my alarm off and just got right back in bed. And like, you would think, man, you've done that 29 times in a row. Why did you do that on day 30? And I, reflecting on it and processing it in class, I didn't have a really good answer, but I think it was a control thing. It was a control thing. Like I want control back. So yeah, I think there's some really interesting things you can learn about yourself with a challenge like this, and it helps me have more empathy for people who I work with that they want control back. And so they go back to using. And I'm like, yeah, I mean, I get it. That is a big challenge, of like trying to figure out how to get through that.
Yeah. I think so much of it boils back down to control. Even that call of the void that Lucas was mentioning about being on top of a high building and like, oh, I could just jump off. Like, oh, I have way more control than I think I should have or could have. Or like you hear about people behind the wheel of a car and they're like, I could just swerve off and hit a tree right now. It's like, because you have so much control right now. Like your mind is going through the possibilities of what you could do with that control.
I have two things. The first one is that, Cole, every time you keep talking about quitting chocolate milk, oh my God, it's so funny. And I know that there's this meme on Instagram from this page called Dank Recovery, which is so inappropriate, but so good. But it's a picture and it's from the movie The Joker.
Yeah.
With Joaquin Phoenix, and they're like on a subway and he's sitting on the subway in like the full Joker outfit. And then there's like a director or someone like trying to talk to him. And by the director, it was like my grandma telling me that this apple pie is as good or better as crack.
Yeah.
Then it was like me, someone who has actually done crack.
Well, we got that funny conversation and you went on a rant about it because we were talking about Huey Magoo's chicken fingers or something. And you're like, somebody said that these are as good as crack. And you're like, I'm sorry. Have you ever smoked crack? Do you know what it's like to smoke crack? These chicken fingers are not as good as crack. And then you just went off on a whole like tangent and it was absolutely hilarious. Yes. Yeah. Chocolate milk is not crack. Okay.
And it's funny that like the most addictive thing in your life, you're like, guys, I would have one whole glass of chocolate milk. And I'm waiting for you to say after every meal, once an hour, 6 times a day. You were like, literally every day, once a day, I would have one whole. And I mean, the glass was this big. I'd fill it to the brim. It was a full 8 ounces.
I gotta say that's impressive though, because he did say from like childhood. So from childhood to now college days.
No,
Well,
I think
and
I
you're in
think
grad school.
the patterns still get so set in, and it's
I,
it's
I
just
feel the need to somehow validate my badassness that, dude, it was a big glass of chocolate
yeah.
milk. Okay. And it was a lot of
It's
chocolate.
one of those sports cups you get at a college football game. It was like this
Yeah.
big.
I actually did in high school. That was my thing. And my wife can attest to this. Like every day with 2 sausage biscuits, and I would had like I don't even know what it was, but like a big like thing like this full of chocolate milk. And I wouldn't stir it. I would shake it. And she would always like die laughing, like when she would come, like get in my truck and I'm like sitting there half asleep, eating my breakfast before we go into class. And I'm just like shaking my like giant thing of chocolate milk. Look, I know it was addiction counseling class. I wasn't going to do anything like crazy serious. You know what I mean? Like then we had to share on it. But
yeah. Hold on. Here's the real question. How many seconds were you? And what I mean by that is everybody counts the seconds as they're squirting the Hershey chocolate into their milk. They're like 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. And then they cap it. So were you like a 4-second guy? Were you like a 10-second guy?
dude, I'm a instead of a second guy, I'm like it's got to fart a couple times. You know, we gotta fully compress this thing, and it sputters.
Yeah.
And then we got to do another squeeze or so, or I'm actually a pretty big like chocolate powder guy. So
Shout out Ovaltine.
Hey, Ovaltine, Nesquik, sponsor us. Come on. Yeah, I'm doing several scoops of those, and what's interesting is I now put that in my coffee, so I don't really drink chocolate milk anymore because I'm basically drinking chocolate coffee every morning. But I certainly have like my numbers, and it's usually like 10 little scoops of our tiny little coffee stirrers, and I'm just like I'm throwing it in there.
This is making so much make sense right now.
So much. I know.
Big mocha guy.
Big mocha dude. Big mocha
and my second thing was to your point, David, of like for a parent to and like specifically give up the cell phone. I feel like that one is so good because you would have all of these like very legitimate concerns about it. And that's like how legitimate it feels for the addict alcoholic bringing up these concerns of like, well, I need to do it for this, or I need to do it for that. It would feel just as legitimate as the parent being like, well, I have to have my calendar. Like I have a job that I support a family with that I need to like have this and get text messages and get phone calls and whatever. Like it would be just that justified in the addict alcoholic's mind for like whatever stuff they would bring up. And from the outside looking in, you'd be like, oh my God, that's not like a real thing, or not. It's not a real thing, but it's like, that's not a good reason to not stop doing these drugs and alcohol. So I feel like that'd be such a good example for parents to like, that is how messed up it would feel when someone's like, hey, you should quit this. And it's like, are you insane? I would lose everything. I'd lose my job. I wouldn't be able to support my family. I'd be 2 bad decisions away from like living in a box.
I would imagine most moms would say their first thing would be, but what if there's an emergency? Mm-hmm. And to that point, it's like, if an addict doesn't have their fix, everything is an emergency.
Everything.
That is an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
You make it an emergency to get your fix. It's got to be an emergency.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to add into this podcast, just to give perspective on like how these scales can tip. I just kind of want to talk through my timeline of starting a lifestyle of recovery. And in the first week, 2 weeks, every single day I wanted to quit. I wasn't allowed a phone call every day. It was like every other day in the beginning, but every time I got that phone call, I called my mom and begging her to come pick me up. I wanted to quit. And again, if I took that thought process a step further, it would have been to get high, to go back to what was comfortable to me at the time. But all I could think about was, and I need somebody to save me. After like a couple of weeks of wanting to call every single day, it backed off. And I don't know if that was what my mom was telling me, what counselors were telling me. Maybe it's starting to experience a little bit of self-pride, worth through working in the program I was in, but it backed off to maybe 2 or 3 times a week. And that went on for 2 or 3 weeks. So now we're past a month. And then it backed off to maybe I just wanted rescuing like once or twice a month. So it's like slowly tapering off. To eventually, like 5 months down the road, 6 months down the road, I'm not having many of those thoughts anymore. I'm feeling good about myself in recovery. And then it was around the 11-month mark, and I went against my sponsor's advice. I got a girlfriend.
Whoa.
Yeah.
A lady.
Yep. I introduced a relationship into my life. Or maybe it was like, yeah, around 11 months, 11, maybe even 12 months. No, I didn't have a year yet. I know that. So maybe 10, 11 months. Then we went through a rough patch, a breakup. And that devastated me. That
Shocker.
was like the first, like, throw the scales back in the other direction. Like things aren't going my way. I'm starting to like, all the things that were said to me before I got sober of like, you're not good enough. You're never going to be good enough. All those thoughts were coming back to the forefront of my mind. And I called my mentor at the time, my sponsor, and I said, you know what? I think this is just not for me. I'm going to go get messed up tonight. Like I'm not going all the way back out, but I'm going to go drink. And he said, stay where you are. I'm going to come pick you up. Let's just ride around for a minute. Dude, if you still want to drink after we talk, I will take you to the liquor store. Like, I'll take you there. Hell, I'll buy it for you. But let me just come get you. And he came and picked me up, and we rode around and talked. And I did what I was always told to do. People told me, like, when those thoughts come up, reach out to someone who understands you, who's in recovery. And I at least did that. That had been like hammered into my head. It's like, okay, I'm going to do it, but I'm just going to tell them what I'm doing. Like, hey, there's no stopping me now. But yeah, he said, stay right where you are. I'm coming to get you. And it was like 11:30 at night. And he drove from a town over to come pick me up. We rode around, talked for a while, and I didn't drink. And that was all. I just needed time. I needed someone to normalize it all for me, the situation, for him to say, you dumbass, I told you not to get in a relationship in the first place for your first year. Like, this is why. And I had to hear all of that. So I just wanted to talk through, before we wrap this podcast up, like how often you can have the thoughts of wanting to quit, and then how long they can persist. They were still happening for me. Not often, but one big one happened like 10, 11 months into my journey. And luckily I picked up my phone, I called that person, and they were able to normalize it and talk me through it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a good, like, I guess, warning sign or a vulnerable time is anytime there's like some kind of like unexpected change, and things are out of your control. So maybe that's what it is. Like, control is like the fulcrum here. Like, early on in your sobriety, probably don't have much control. The thoughts are going to go up, right? A girl breaks up with you, you lose a job, a parent gets sick, somebody you love passes away, right? So control's gone down. That's like the linchpin of it. And then those thoughts are more likely to happen as a result.
Yeah. The other thing that happens when control goes down is fear goes up.
Yeah.
It's fear of the unknown, and I'm no longer behind the steering wheel. And I'd say that it's two factors there: lack of control and fear. And that is what is driving this bus of substance use disorder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 And, at the end of the day, sometimes you just are out of control and you just need a gigantic glass of chocolate milk, huge glass of chocolate milk to grab that control back. You know what I'm saying? You boys with me?
Make me sick, dude.
All I could think of is I just saw a video yesterday of Bryce or DeChambeau, the golfer.
Oh, yeah.
And he was golfing with John Daly. And John Daly was like, I know you can never drink as much as me, so what we're going to do today is chug chocolate milk. And fix two big styrofoam cups of chocolate milk, and they both chugged them on camera. That's all that was running through my mind as you were telling that story.
Sounds like a good time.
Yeah. But yeah, anything else we want to add to this before we wrap it up?
Anybody got any more tips? So, like, kind of like writing it out, talking to someone. Those are some of the tips that have been said so far. Knowing it's normal, super important. So you're not like shameful about it.
doing things to like
Distraction.
increase your pride, your sense
Yeah.
of self-worth and pride. So don't just stay stuck in a rut and wallow in that. Actually take steps to change things.
Yeah. I think also like learning to step away from it. So maybe you go outside and go on a walk. Maybe you cut your grass. Maybe you go lift weights. Like do something where you actually are having some real influence on your day, and you have like some of that control come back in, but it's in a healthier way. I think that's a pretty good one.
Yeah. Call your mentor, your community. That's a huge piece is
Huge.
make sure you're keeping healthy people around you. And not just one, too, is another big thing I talk about is like, and Lucas and I have talked about this a lot of like, if you have one person that you're dumping everything on, it's like you're holding your structure up with one pillar. And eventually that pillar is going to crumble. So it's important to have several people in your life that are healthy, that want what's best for you, that'll like point you in the right direction. Even when stuff's not looking great, they'll like be honest with you. You need several of those people who represent pillars in your life that you can kind of like, it sounds bad to say it like this, but like equally dump stuff on. Like when things come up for you, like reach out to not just to that one person every time, which you see a lot in relationships. Like I'm just going to dump everything onto my wife.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually she's going to like not be able to carry that load.
100%.
Spread the load.
Diversify, boys. Diversify. That's the word we want to use.
No, yeah, I think that it's time plus action, and both of those things matter a lot. It's the amount of time you have away from it, and it's also what you do in that time. I think you could do a 12-hour therapy session in one day, and you're probably not going to be better the next day, and you might just gain enough insight that makes you want to go straight out of there and use and drink as much as you can, or just like too much awareness. And I think you could also have years away from substances, but no introspection, no like work on self. And I would also probably be maybe sober, and I could maybe stay sober, but miserable. And I didn't get sober to be miserable. And so I feel like it's the combination of time and action, and just give yourself that gift to be able to have what's on the other side of it. But you got to get to the other side. And they say in the rooms, like as far as I walked into the woods, I had to walk that far back out. But if I walk 10 feet and I'm like, this walk sucks, I'm going to stop walking, or like I should just instantly be out. It's just, those are the kind of instant gratification thoughts that come from someone being conditioned with addiction, or really just the human condition. I find is more of the instant gratification.
Mm-hmm.
Those are my closing thoughts.
Close it. Pretty good.
Yeah, that's a good close. All right, let's wrap it up there.
All right. Sounds good.